On the American frontier, survival often hinged on the weapon you carried. From rugged frontiersmen and skilled hunters to hardened gunslingers, soldiers, and native warriors, these tools were their lifeline. Some were brutal, unforgiving, forged to end conflict decisively. Legends were born from some, while others proved too savage, too potent, or too unwieldy for common adoption. Yet everyone carved its place in history. A single shot, a swift cut, a defining moment on the battlefield. Prepare yourself, because out here, it's a simple truth. Kill or be killed. We begin our countdown with a weapon nearly as ancient as warfare itself. Number 10. Tomahawk. More than just a tool, the tomahawk was a frontier staple, a means of survival, a valuable trade item, and a formidable weapon when conflict arose. Lightweight, exceptionally lethal, and devastatingly effective, it became common among warriors, colonial militia, and settlers alike. If you were navigating or fighting in the American West, chances were good you carried one. The original concept is credited to the Algonquian people, predating European arrival by centuries. Early versions featured heads crafted from stone or antler, carefully shaped and secured to wooden handles with rawhide lashing. But the advent of metalworking through European trade revolutionized the tomahawk. Iron and steel heads, often inspired by the short, vicious Royal Navy boarding axes used for close-quarter ship combat, quickly replaced stone. These metal variations spread rapidly, adopted by tribes across the vast Great Plains and the Southern Territories. The tomahawk's true strength lay in its versatility. Need to fell timber? Effortless. Pry open a strongbox? Simple. Incapacitate an adversary with a blow? Terrifyingly possible. Some designs incorporated a hammer or spike opposite the blade, enhancing their utility and their deadliness in a fight. The iconic pipe tomahawk, combining a tobacco bowl with a hollow shaft for smoking, symbolized frontier diplomacy, one side for peace, the other poised for war. The British recognized the tomahawk's potential early on. By the late 1700s, they were standard issue for colonial units like the renowned Rogers Rangers. These were seasoned frontiersmen, masters of ambush, survival, and rapid movement through enemy terrain. A swift, accurate swing could be as decisive as a musket ball. Tomahawk combat played a role on both sides of the American Revolution, wielded by Patriot riflemen and British loyalists. The tomahawk embodied the fierce adaptability of the frontier fighter, swift, brutal, and relentless. Whether employed for battle, commerce, or the delicate balance of a truce, the tomahawk was a weapon intrinsically linked to the frontier experience. But for raw stopping power, you needed something with more impact. Which brings us to number 9, Hawken Rifle. This right here is what defined the frontier's premier big game slayer. The Hawken rifle was an exceptional survival instrument, a clear indicator of status, and a guaranteed end for anything foolish enough to cross its path. Engineered for the harsh, untamed frontier, this was the rifle favored by the mountain men, trappers, and hunters whose lives depended on their ability to strike hard and fast. Jacob and Samuel Hawken, setting up their forge in St. Louis in 1815, understood precisely the demands of the West. They weren't crafting ornate display pieces. They were building rifles capable of dropping a grizzly in its tracks and punching through the thick hide of a buffalo at considerable range. Designed specifically for the rigorous conditions of the West, the Hawken rifle, often known as the Rocky Mountain Rifle, boasted deadly accuracy and delivered a formidable punch. The first documented Hawken rifle surfaced in 1823, built for fur trade magnate William Henry Ashley. He dubbed it Old Bill, and for good reason. This powerhouse featured a 42-inch barrel and fired a 68 caliber ball. Enough stopping power to ensure that whatever it hit stayed down permanently. By the 1830s, the rifle was in the hands of some of the most formidable figures on the frontier. Trappers, scouts, and brigade leaders like Andrew Drips, Lucien Fontenelle, and Auguste Archambault. For anyone whose livelihood depended on surviving the wilderness, a Hawken rifle was an essential investment. Unlike the mass-produced firearms that emerged later, each Hawken was meticulously handcrafted by a small team, turning out around 100 rifles annually. This exclusivity made it a weapon of choice for some of the frontier's most legendary individuals: Hugh Glass, Kit Carson, Jim Bridger, and even Theodore Roosevelt. If your work involved facing down an enraged grizzly or defending yourself far from civilization, this was the rifle you wanted beside you. Meanwhile, as the frontier expanded, so too did its firearms, evolving to offer new levels of firepower for a changing era. Number 8. Springfield Trapdoor Rifle. On the frontier, the Springfield Trapdoor Rifle carved its name through harsh trials. Nicknamed the Needle Gun due to its long firing pin, this weapon originated as a clever battlefield conversion, transforming surplus Civil War muzzleloaders into modern breech-loading rifles in 1865. The trapdoor moniker came from its distinctive hinged breech block, which swung open to allow quick loading of a new cartridge. Early models fired a potent 58 caliber rimfire round, but by 1866, the Army introduced the improved 50-70 centerfire version, providing soldiers with the sustained firepower needed to endure the brutal Indian Wars. Indeed, this rifle proved indispensable to the U.S. Army along the Bozeman Trail during the hayfield and wagon box fights of 1867. Small detachments of troops successfully fought off hundreds of Lakota warriors, reloading their trapdoors rapidly enough to prevent their enemies from closing the critical distance. Hide hunters also recognized its potential. Buffalo Bill Cody famously used his own 50-70 Allen conversion, a rifle he christened Lucretia Borgia, after the infamous, beautiful, and deadly Renaissance noblewoman. With it, he harvested vast numbers of buffalo to feed the expanding railroads. By 1873, the Springfield Model 1873 became the Army's first official standard-issue breech-loading rifle. It was produced as both a full-length infantry rifle and a shorter cavalry carbine. The rifle earned its position after stringent evaluations overseen by Brigadier General Alfred H. Terry. Nearly 100 different rifles, including repeating arms like the Spencer and Winchester, were rigorously tested for reliability, firing speed, and performance under battlefield conditions. Ultimately, the single-shot Springfield was selected, not for being the fastest, but for its superior reliability and lower production cost. New recruits could manage about 8 rounds per minute. Experienced soldiers could push that rate closer to 15. Despite its limitations compared to future designs, the Springfield trapdoor was revolutionary for its time. It provided soldiers, frontiersmen, and buffalo hunters with the necessary range and firepower to survive in an unforgiving landscape. Slow by today's standards, certainly, but when it mattered most, this rifle represented the crucial difference between life and death. And why settle for just one shot when you could deliver round after round? That brings us to number 7, Winchester lever-action repeating rifle. Now we're talking about a true icon of the Old West. The Winchester 73 was undoubtedly the darling of the frontier. Compact, exceptionally reliable, and chambered in popular revolver calibers like .440, .3840, and .3220, it offered cowboys, outlaws, and lawmen the unparalleled convenience of carrying a rifle and a handgun that shared the same ammunition. It quickly became a favorite among Texas Rangers, U.S. Marshals, and virtually everyone traversing the frontier. It fit perfectly into a saddle scabbard, could withstand harsh treatment, and consistently performed. While the Winchester Model 1873 is often called the gun that won the West, its larger sibling, the Model 1876, was the rifle that delivered greater punch, extended range, and meant serious business when stakes were highest. Featuring a heavier frame and designed for true rifle cartridges, unlike the pistol-sized rounds of its predecessor. This was a firearm built for individuals who demanded significant stopping power. Whether they were taking down buffalo, defending a frontier homestead, or riding with the Texas Rangers. Introduced at the Centennial Exposition in 1876, it was engineered to handle full-sized rifle rounds, not the lighter pistol cartridges the 73 utilized. If you were hunting grizzlies or halting a charging bison, you needed something capable of penetrating thick hide and muscle. The 76 delivered precisely that. The Model 1876 was available in 4 primary configurations. First, the carbine, with a 22-inch barrel, short, handy, ideal for carry on horseback. Then came the express rifle, featuring a 26-inch barrel and a half-length magazine, offering a balance of firepower and maneuverability. Third was the sporting rifle, with a 28-inch barrel, clearly built for serious hunting applications. Lastly, there was the musket version, boasting a 32 1/2-inch barrel, favored by the military, although not widely issued. If you needed proof that the Model 1876 was built for demanding use, simply look at some of its famous owners. Theodore Roosevelt owned a custom-engraved model with a pistol grip and half magazine, which he used extensively on his early hunting expeditions. Geronimo, the legendary Apache leader, had a 76 with him when he finally surrendered in 1886. Numerous lawmen and outlaws also relied on this rifle. Figures like Pat Garrett, Butch Cassidy, Bat Masterson, and Billy the Kid all had compelling reasons to place their trust in Winchester steel when survival hung in the balance. So, in essence, if you were heading into the wild, these were the firearms you absolutely wanted in your hands. And coming up, meet the king of one-shot kills at Number 6. Sharp's Rifle. Old reliable death delivered from afar. If any single-shot rifle embodies the harsh reality of the American frontier, it's the Sharps. This wasn't a delicate firearm for show. It was a powerful, bone-jarring engine built for killing buffalo, capable of transforming a distant target into a crimson mist from half a mile away. Designed by Christian Sharps in 1848, this formidable rifle quickly gained a deadly reputation for its precision, sheer power, and unwavering dependability. By 1874, it had been adapted to chamber the new, potent metallic cartridges, and its performance in the field swiftly earned it the enduring moniker, Old Reliable. The name wasn't a marketing slogan. It stuck because the Sharps consistently performed when called upon. Following the Civil War, Sharps rifles found a new, grim purpose: the wholesale slaughter of buffalo. Hunters used them to drop bison with devastating long-range accuracy, feeding the booming hide trade and accelerating the American buffalo's tragic near-extinction. The power of these rifles was absolutely immense. Firing colossal 40 to 50 caliber cartridges, they could pierce dense hide, muscle, and bone with terrifying ease. The most skilled marksmen even took their rifles to compete in 1,000-yard Creedmoor matches, proving that the Sharps was not only deadly, but also astonishingly precise. Although the Sharps Rifle Company closed its doors in 1881, the legend of the rifle never faded. Today, modern reproductions are still crafted for historical reenactors, long-range shooting enthusiasts, and history buffs seeking to experience the raw force of one of the West's most brutal weapons. One thing remains undeniably true: The Sharps rifle was an instrument of death from a distance, and it excelled at its purpose. And while the Sharps was certainly lethal, remember, it wasn't the only game in town. Number 5. Remington Rolling Block Rifle. Now this firearm, this was the quintessential workhorse of the frontier. Exceptionally robust, mechanically simple, and virtually indestructible, this rifle became the favored choice for countless hunters, frontiersmen, and even military forces across the globe from the 1860s well into the early 20th century. E. Remington and Sons produced these breech-loading rifles in an incredible array of calibers, ensuring that anyone needing a dependable rifle had one readily available. The design was as straightforward as it was ingenious. The rolling block action was a single-action, single-shot system. Cock the hammer back, rotate the breech block open, insert a round, and pull the trigger. No unnecessary complexities, no delicate components, just pure mechanical reliability and potent firepower. This inherent simplicity meant fewer things could malfunction in the demanding conditions of the field, which is precisely why professional buffalo hunters cherished it. When you're aiming to bring down a 1,000-pound bison at 300 yards, a jammed rifle is the last thing you can afford. And it wasn't just buffalo hunters who swore by its capabilities. In 1874, when the American rifle team faced off against their Irish counterparts at the famed Creedmoor Rifle Range, half of the American team was armed with rolling block Creedmoor models, while the other half used Sharps rifles. The outcome? A decisive American victory that solidified the rolling block's reputation as a formidable long-range killer. Compared to some of the more celebrated frontier firearms, the rolling block doesn't always command the same spotlight. But make no mistake, this was arguably one of the most widely utilized, hardest-hitting rifles of the 19th century. Simple, built to last, and utterly lethal. Of course, some confrontations unfolded too quickly for a single-shot reload. Number 4. Double-barreled shotgun. And if you imagine the double-barreled shotgun is merely a refined sporting arm, you're mistaken. This is the definitive crowd tamer. On the American frontier, this was the ultimate instrument of equalization. Affordable, brutally effective, and straightforward to operate, it placed significant firepower directly into the hands of anyone brave enough to endure its recoil. Pioneers scraping together their last pennies for a chance at a new life in the West weren't spending fortunes on vast arsenals. They required one firearm capable of handling multiple tasks, harvesting game for sustenance, repelling bandits, and asserting control over unruly gatherings. The double-barrel shotgun perfectly met these needs. Whether an older muzzle loader or a newer breech loader, firing with a cap lock or metallic cartridges, it became the indispensable firearm for settlers, law enforcement officers, express riders, native warriors, miners, ranchers, and bounty hunters alike. Unlike single-shot muskets or slow-loading rifles, a double-barrel shotgun could unleash 2 rounds in rapid succession, either one barrel at a time, or for those who could withstand the bone-jarring kick, both simultaneously. Its nickname, the crowd tamer, was earned through direct application. Simply leveling it at a group of troublemakers was often sufficient to make them seriously reconsider their actions. And if that failed, well, 2 barrels loaded with buckshot typically ended the discussion definitively. Pinpoint accuracy wasn't its primary virtue, but it didn't require it. At close range, a blast from a scattergun was unequivocally a death sentence, and with an effective range for its ammunition 4 to 6 times beyond its typical spread pattern, it remained dangerous even beyond its intended close-quarters role. Furthermore, unlike pump-action or semi-automatic shotguns, a double barrel was remarkably simple to operate. Break it open, visually confirm the chamber status, Snap it shut, and you're ready to fire. No complex bolts to manipulate. No worrying about jams occurring in the heat of a desperate situation. And when it came time to reload, a quick break-open action, drop in 2 fresh shells, and you were instantly back in the fight. It's worth noting that some veteran hunters employed this tactic with heavy-gauge elephant guns, delivering 2 massive slugs into a charging beast, or a charging outlaw, at point-blank range. Carrying a double-barreled shotgun instantly commanded respect, or instilled fear, depending entirely on which end of the barrels you happened to be facing. It was, and remains, one of the most reliable and devastating weapons ever to ride the frontier trails. And if 2 barrels weren't enough, sometimes cold steel was the only way to settle the score. Number 3. Bowie Knife. You see, on the frontier, a knife was more than just a tool. It was a symbol of one's ability to survive through sheer personal force, and no blade earned a bloodier, more fearsome reputation than the Bowie knife. The knife bears the name of James Bowie, a man whose legendary status as a knife fighter eventually overshadowed the verifiable facts of his life. Some historical accounts suggest he only ever engaged in a single duel specifically with a blade, the infamous Sandbar Fight of 1827. But that solitary encounter was enough. The dramatic spectacle of Bowie savagely wounding an armed adversary while grievously injured himself instantly elevated him to legendary status. Newspapers from as far away as Philadelphia and Washington, D.C., sensationalized the story, and before long, men across America clamored for a knife just like his. But what exactly constitutes a Bowie knife? That's where defining it becomes challenging. By the mid-1800s, the term Bowie knife had become a generic description for any large, formidable blade designed for both combat and utility in the wilderness. Some designs featured straight edges, others incorporated distinct clip points. Some were substantial enough to serve almost as short swords. The most celebrated and perhaps infamous designs are attributed to Arkansas bladesmith James Black, who is said to have forged knives possessing the ability to slice with razor-like keenness, chop like a hatchet, and even function as a makeshift paddle. These substantial knives were essential frontier instruments, used for skinning harvested game, chopping necessary wood, or simply as an intimidating presence to ward off anyone with ill intentions. A properly honed Bowie could strip the hide from a carcass with the same chilling efficiency it could be used to dismember an opponent. That inherent versatility made it the blade of choice for westward pioneers, rugged mountain men, and notorious outlaws alike. However, as revolvers became more affordable and widely available after the Civil War, the critical need for a massive fighting knife gradually diminished. By the late 1800s, the typical Bowie had shrunk significantly, evolving into more of a practical hunting and camping knife than a dedicated weapon of war. Yet, its fearsome legend endured. While steel might have written the initial chapters of the frontier narrative, it was ultimately lead that brought the story to its conclusion. And if you're deeply fascinated by the history of the Bowie knife and its storied past, we've produced a comprehensive video exploring all the intricate details. You can find the link in the description below. Number 2. Long rifle now. Cast aside the image of the cumbersome muskets used on European battlefields. On the American frontier, accuracy wasn't just desirable, it was absolutely crucial for survival. This is where the long rifle enters the picture. The weapon that consistently provided sustenance and sent British soldiers retreating. Whether you refer to it as the Kentucky rifle, the Pennsylvania rifle, or simply the American long rifle, this was the firearm that fundamentally shaped a continent. Developed by skilled German gunsmiths in the southeastern regions of Pennsylvania during the early 1700s, the long rifle represented a significant advancement. It featured an exceptionally long barrel, frequently exceeding 4 feet in length, paired with a small caliber bore. This specific combination endowed it with unparalleled accuracy for its time. Unlike the smoothbore muskets commonly carried by most armies, this rifle incorporated rifled grooves spiraling within the barrel. This meant a lead ball wasn't merely propelled haphazardly. It was imparted with a stabilizing spin, maintaining deadly accuracy over significantly greater distances, and that difference was monumental. Frontiersmen didn't engage in combat in neat, organized ranks like European soldiers. Their survival depended on hunting, executing ambushes, and precisely targeting enemies from a distance. With a typical musket, you were fortunate to hit a man at 50 yards. With a well-made long rifle, a proficient shooter could reliably strike a target at 200 yards, or even beyond. That represents the crucial difference between having venison stew for dinner or facing the bitter reality of hunger. It's also the difference between a redcoat making a safe return journey to Britain or bleeding out on some isolated wooded trail. Captain John G. W. Dillon perfectly summarized its impact in his 1924 work, The Kentucky Rifle. An unknown smith in a shop long since silent fashioned a rifle which changed the whole course of world history. Fatally precise, uniquely American. However, compared to a smoothbore musket, reloading the long rifle was a slower process. Each shot required forcing a tightly fitting lead ball down the length of the barrel. And after just a few shots, the residue from black powder combustion would foul the bore, making reloading nearly impossible without a thorough cleaning procedure. This wasn't a major issue when you were patiently hunting deer in the forest, but in the chaos and intensity of a pitched battle, far from ideal. Nevertheless, the rifle's inherent accuracy and remarkable efficiency made it an absolute necessity for dedicated hunters, skilled scouts, and military sharpshooters. Soldiers employed them extensively in conflicts like the French and Indian War, the American Revolution, the War of 1812, and they even saw limited use into the Civil War. By the 1750s, frontiersmen carrying these sleek, exceptionally deadly rifles were a familiar sight across the landscape. The long rifle itself also continued to evolve, incorporating larger calibers for bigger game, thicker barrels for increased durability, and even appearing in shorter, more portable variations like the later Hawken rifle, which sacrificed some length for greater maneuverability. But the fundamental principle of the long rifle, the emphasis on precision over brute firepower, remained constant. Some historians might well argue that this was truly the rifle that played a foundational role in building America. And now, we arrive at our final weapon. Number 1. Girardoni Air Rifle. Forget everything you know about black powder and musket balls. In the late 1700s, an Italian gunsmith named Bartolomeo Girardoni engineered something that seemed ripped straight from the pages of a science fiction novel, the Girardoni Air Rifle. No smoke, no telltale report of gunpowder. Just a lethal .46 caliber lead ball, propelled with chilling silence by nothing more than compressed air. For its era, this was a revolutionary game-changer. While conventional muzzle loaders compelled soldiers to expose themselves while standing to reload under enemy fire, the Girardoni allowed a marksman to remain low and continue engaging targets. A simple, quick flick of a chamber bar dropped a new ball into the breech, and the rifle was instantly ready to fire again. No fumbling with powder charges, no need for ramrods, just pure, elegant mechanical efficiency. The rifle's air reservoir, ingeniously concealed within its distinctive club-shaped stock, held enough compressed pressure to fire approximately 30 rounds before its power significantly diminished. At its peak pressure, it was capable of hitting a target accurately up to 125 yards away, delivering a deadly strike without the loud, attention-grabbing bang of a standard musket shot. However, the rifle did possess one significant vulnerability. Maintaining sufficient air pressure was incredibly difficult in a battlefield environment. Soldiers were required to carry cumbersome hand pumps or heavy air tanks, a logistical nightmare when compared to the simple act of carrying extra gunpowder. Ultimately, its complexity prevented its widespread adoption and deployment by major military forces. But on the untamed American frontier, that was a very different scenario. Meriwether Lewis carried one of these extraordinary weapons during his legendary expedition across the newly acquired Louisiana Territory. Each time he and William Clark encountered a new Native American tribe, Lewis would dramatically demonstrate the rifle's capabilities by firing a rapid series of shots, showcasing its seemingly miraculous ability to fire repeatedly without any visible powder or smoke. The astonished onlookers were deeply impressed, often referring to the weapon as "great medicine." Thus, in a land where possessing superior firepower frequently meant the difference between survival and death, the Girardoni served as much as a potent psychological weapon as it did a physical one. There persists some historical debate regarding whether the air rifle carried by Lewis was a genuine Girardoni model or a similar design constructed by the skilled Philadelphia gunsmith Isaiah Lukens. But regardless of its exact origin, one fact is abundantly clear. On a frontier where gunfights were typically settled with slow, single-shot firearms, this air rifle was a brutal anomaly, silent, incredibly fast-firing, and undeniably deadly. And as we conclude today's episode, there is absolutely no denying it. The American frontier was a fiercely brutal and unforgiving place, and every single one of these weapons played a critical role in ensuring that only the toughest, most adaptable individuals managed to survive. Some forged lasting legends. Others were instruments that helped wipe them out. But one thing is certain. When these weapons spoke on the frontier, history was compelled to listen.